All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Best Practices in Automated Permit Processing. My name is Earl Lang. I'm Senior Integrated Marketing Manager here at Dude Solutions for our government vertical, and I have the pleasure of moderating today's webcast. Before I get into things, just wanted to cover a few ground rules, housekeeping items, and some updates for today's event. Like I said, I'll be moderating. All phone lines have been muted. That's more to reduce background noise than anything. Don't want that to discourage communication or questions from the audience. So if you do have a question throughout today's event, feel free to use the QA feature to submit that question. We'll be monitoring those throughout today's event. And when we get to the Q&A portion at the end, we'll hop into those questions and can answer those real time. So submit those throughout the webinar as they come up. And we'll hop onto that Q&A portion there at the end. Second note for me is a quick update on speaker. Jeff Pavey, who was going to speak on today's webinar, had a last-minute change of schedule, so he was unable to join us, but we're lucky to have Mr. Brian Ondrako, who is stepping in today to lead today's presentation and run you guys through a bunch of great content. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and kick this over to Brian. Brian, take it away.
Earl, thank you very much. I appreciate the kind words, and welcome everyone. I took a look at the kind of list of attendees. I know we got folks from all over the country here, so some are well fed. I know some maybe are eating here as we go through, so we'll have some fun. We'll talk through it, and hope you guys get some good learning out of today. And as Earl mentioned, like I said, I've been with Dude Solutions for a couple of years. I'm kind of taking the place for Jeff Pavey today. We'll get him on. We'll do a part 2 here. We'll get him on next time. I'm excited you guys to listen to some of his journey, obviously, in government and some of the great insight he has. But for today, you guys are stuck with me. So let's kick it off here. I want to make this, obviously, there's so many different areas we can cover. We really wanted to parse it down to a couple of things that I know a lot of jurisdictions we're working with are talking about, are conversing about, are having internal conversations about here in 2020. One of the things I did want to go into, because there's folks on the call that know who Dude Solutions is, and we've maybe been partners with us for a long time. Others have no idea, and they kind of stumbled into the webinar here. So what I did want to give a quick background, and then we'll jump into everything. So Dude Solutions, the big thing for you guys to take away here is, we work with a variety of partners, again, across the country. A lot of them, it's really where people, live, work, and play. So whether that's local government, that's, schools, manufacturing facilities, healthcare, senior living, those type. So one of the things we're trying to do is empower our partners with different technology to really do the best work of their lives. So I'll throw a couple quick stats up here. Again, some of these may or may not be relevant to y'all. One of the cool things from like a community development permitting standpoint that's really neat as we get to parse all the data from partners is I think we did about 4 million permits last year through our SmartGov solution, about 160,000 different licenses. So it's really neat to kind of see some of that stuff come to fruition and see our partners obviously doing well. So as Earl mentioned, and kind of kick things off here, we're gonna talk through a few different areas. What I want to do though is I want to break it down into 3 core areas today, because when we talk with a lot of partners, a lot of it is around, hey Brian, how do I improve our processes? Maybe we have older processes, or maybe we're new to a jurisdiction, and gosh, we got to change some things. So what I thought was fair for everyone out there is let's talk in 3 different areas. All right, we're going to talk around collaboration, analysis, and then growth. And my goal here, at the end of the day, right, y'all are obviously doing phenomenal jobs in your specific roles and jurisdictions. I'm not going to come on the webinar and tell you I know everything, because I don't. I'm not in your shoes every day. I'm not in the trenches. But one of the things that we have an advantage for here at Dude Solutions is we are on the sidelines. We're kind of looking at the full scope from the field view. So there's a lot of things that we see across different population sizes across the country that we can share and give some insight. So my goal here really today for y'all is maybe 1 or 2 really good nuggets that you guys can take back to your teams, to your customers, and really work and improve and, kind of sharpen the saw. If anyone's familiar with Stephen Covey, his 7th habit there. So what I thought we'd do, let's jump into a quick poll question. I'd be curious, just everyone on the call here. Some of this may pertain to y'all, others, again, you may mark one of the different boxes, but I'm just kind of curious right off the bat, in terms of everyone in the room, what are y'all thinking about? These are some of the big ones I hear a lot with a lot of partners that we work with, but I'm just curious everyone's thoughts out there. So we'll give maybe 30 seconds or so, think about it, put your answer down there. Earl, when you kind of see the results flow in, why don't you tap me on the shoulder and we'll kind of jump through some stuff.
Will do, not a problem. Poll is live now, audience. You guys go ahead and fill that up. Like Brian said, we'll leave that up for about 30 seconds here to allow for some response time, and then dive into the results and share those with you guys.
As y'all are working on that, and if hopefully some have already checked in there, checked the boxes, I'm going to jump to the next. My goal here is to be concise today, but I wanted to, like I said, have some cool nuggets that you guys could put in there. Oh, this is really cool, Earl. Okay, some good results there. All the above. Wow, that's pretty high. Well, we'll talk through some of this. That's really good. Hopefully where, some of these things that y'all are thinking through, hopefully it's stuff that you guys have already talked about internally. Maybe some have already put into action, some haven't. But one of the things that, and you guys know this, right? I mean, you're out there, whether you have Amazon Prime or you're going to a local restaurant, right? Customer service is very important. You guys know that, right? How do we improve that connection point? So we want you guys to think internally as well. As you have folks that come in, as you work with contractors, whatever it may be, business owners, how do we help them? How do we improve that connection point? Because as you guys know, right, technology has changed so much. Gosh, I was thinking about the other day. I mean, it's been only about 12 years since the iPhone came out. And it's just incredible, obviously, on where technology has gone in that time. I was actually, I'll tell a little story here. It's funny. I was actually talking to my son. I have a 7-year-old. And I said, hey, Lucas, do you know that Daddy used to have to use something called a rotary phone? And I used to have to dial each number. And he's like, yeah, Daddy, I just go to FaceTime and I hit Daddy and it calls you. So I was like, okay, he doesn't get it. But you guys know, I mean, at the end of the day, right, technology is moving just as fast as possible. So how do we work with you guys and actually make the most efficient processes that you can, have the best technology that you can to move things forward? And gosh, as we know, we've been pretty lucky, right, over the last decade or so in terms of growth and development in the country. So how do we actually look at doing more with less, right? Because obviously that stuff is popping. Maybe you guys, staff sizes haven't grown and those type of things. So certainly sensitive to that. So a couple things here to my point I just made, and then we're going to jump right into some of those. I won't waste any more time. A couple of things. We actually, a really cool survey that was done. It's been done actually over the last few years. I think every 2 years they did it over the last 6. But really neat some of the stats on here. I won't point to all of them, but it's just this shift that we see with a lot of jurisdictions that understand that, hey, I have to improve, whether it's my website, I have to understand that, a lot of folks are going on their phones more. So how do I make it more mobile friendly? What was really interesting in the bottom right, if you guys see, is just the amount of from online permitting alone, how much that has shifted over the last handful of years, right? Which has probably been a bigger shift from, 05 to 2015. I don't know what the stats are there. That'd be cool to see. But it was probably a very small shift if you look at the uplift just in the last couple of years. Now, I know there's an array of folks on the call here. So some are already doing some stuff full-fledged. Others, you might be still on a lot of paper, and everyone in between. But it's more than just that process. A lot of this comes down to communication, how you're working with your customers, how you're working with internal staff, okay? So that's where I want to start. Let's talk about collaboration a little bit, kind of that first checkbox. And what y'all will notice as we talk through today, there's really, these 3 areas are kind of going to intermingle, if you will. So with collaboration, I like to break it down in a few different areas, especially with the roles that are on this call. So I'll start first with kind of that, think of that first line of defense, if you will, right? Someone walks into the office, right? Or maybe someone makes a phone call. How do we ensure consistent messaging, right? So really the big key, the reason I put this here from a collaboration standpoint is really empowering a lot of our office staff, office managers, et cetera, training them properly. How did they actually on the front line be able to recognize maybe red flag issues that are coming up? Being able to give them the tools to be, as I kind of say, quote unquote, an advisor, more than just someone that's coming in and kind of helping them enter some information in. So that's how I want you guys to start thinking a little bit more. Again, if you guys aren't in that boat, how do the folks at the front end really become that advisor? One of the ways a lot of, I know our partners are doing this is, I'm curious, maybe a visual hand raise from everyone, but I don't know if anyone out there has like a kiosk at their front desk. This is something that a lot of jurisdictions have gone to, where whether it's a computer or maybe it's a tablet, but being able to actually, some of those online services, again, we'll get into this a little bit later, but being able to enter that information into a computer, this now helps that advisor role a little bit more. And what it also does is, especially if you're a jurisdiction that has a lot of lines, it could ultimately, you know, as people are putting that information, now they're not standing in line as long. They also don't have to, you know, sit there as long for their information to get put into a system. So think of it like an airline, right? If you guys go and you're flying on Southwest and you go check in, think of how easy that kiosk system is. That's how I want you guys to start thinking. So it could be an opportunity to go that way. One of the other ways our partners are doing this, and again, I know a lot of you guys are doing this already, which is awesome, is, you know, more pre-planning meetings. How do we improve the communication and collaboration with your applicants, with your contractors, et cetera? Well, one of the ways to do that, right, is setting up these pre-application meetings. So making sure all the information is there, making sure obviously it's sufficient for what they need, and that delays a lot of the back and forth. Making sure, you know, maybe it's, you know, from a design standpoint, right, if there are modifications that need to be made, you want to relay that information up front. So one of those ways is to set up pre-planning meetings. Could be 15 minutes, 30, could be an hour, you guys choose. But it's one of those things, especially for folks that are doing a lot of building maybe in the area, you may give them that added benefit. It's y'all's call if you want to charge or not. I mean, I've seen it gone both ways. Obviously, giving that as an extra service and including that in could be something that's really beneficial. So again, something to think about there. And then I don't know if anyone's doing this as from a case manager standpoint. I see this a lot, or actually probably more at the larger jurisdictions, but again, maybe starting to see that parsed down as well to some of the smaller, is having a central point of contact. Instead of having to call in and get transferred, so-and-so, you know, I got to go to this person, I'm not sure exactly. After maybe that pre-planning, but maybe even otherwise, is having a case manager of, hey, for this particular project, this is the person you go toward. And that could really help, again, improve that communication. Someone feels like there's a little more relationship there. And as you start building that, obviously that helps for the long haul as well. And then lastly on this point, I want to talk about more from an online standpoint. So I've seen enough websites to know, I think I've probably parsed through, you know, hundreds and hundreds of different jurisdictions' website over the years. You know, how do we have your guys, and think about your all's website, right? How is it set up? Is it very concise? Everything is in one section, easy links, maybe they're fillable PDF documents. Think of all those different things, right? The fee schedules are there. Or is it like some that I see is, you know, permits are in one section and licensing's in another, and you know, who knows, maybe all the forms are under one section. And a lot of that's maybe not fault to anyone on the call, right? Because maybe there's other folks in the jurisdiction that are actually putting those websites together. But something you guys may think about is, how do you organize the information? And again, I'll go back to my example earlier from using Amazon or anything else. When you guys shop, when you look for different things, when it's easier where everything's in one section so that there aren't any additional questions, what y'all will start to see is that that trims down a lot of the phone calls, a lot of the emails, a lot of that excess kind of general questions that happens. One of this as well, actually I'll touch on this too, I'm not sure how many folks out there are actually putting GIS data and parcel data or maybe permits that have been issued, et cetera. That information may be open, right? So let's put that on the website. Let's give folks the opportunity, maybe see reports or what have you. Again, trimming down a lot of the wasted energy maybe that your staff has to do. And you'll see this kind of come to fruition as we talk in the next section. I thought I'd highlight for a second here, let you guys, I'm gonna take a deep breath just because I know I'm flying through, but let's talk through a couple of things here. And this is really, this is one of our partners out in Washington, but the reason I parsed out this one page on their website, just so it fits on the screen here on the left and right side, but just kind of the organization of this, if you look, and I'm not saying this is perfect, I'm not saying yours might be good as well, but just some of the information, I really like that they actually have the kind of the mission right at the top, which was really cool. But if you look at the different areas, clickable links, it kind of has direct information on office hours, maybe who to go to, staff, et cetera. Really helps kind of give people comfort that they have all the information up front before they go, submit their information, whether it's online through like a online portal, some stuff we can chat about later from a SmartGov standpoint, or, other stuff out there, or they're still coming in the office, that's fine as well. Let's make sure they have all the right details, because, it's the worst thing to walk in, hand the paperwork over the counter and say, hey, I got everything. And they're like, well, you're missing, you're missing a couple documents. So let's make sure that information is correct up front. So a couple things just to wrap up this section. Remember, it's got to be collaborative. I don't think that's any, grandiose idea that no one else knows out there, right? We got to make it collaborative. How do we actually look through our processes, which we'll go through next, and be able to do that? And remember, we want to make folks, just like you guys do from various areas of life, right? How do we actually make sure that, the jurisdiction, right, the city, the county, what have you, is there really and have their interests protected? And we often talk about this in terms of engaging early on. That's what I talked about with the website information. That's what I talked about, again, maybe having the pre-application meetings. How do we actually, get to where they are before maybe they're going to get there? And that could help you guys alleviate some of the pressure, some of the stresses in the future. Okay, so let's put a pin in collaboration for a minute, and I want to jump on to section 2. Okay, so analysis. Now, this is where it gets really fun because, I know everyone, can improve. Everyone can improve. You guys can, I can improve from this webinar to the next one, right? So we can all look at different ways that we can improve on a daily basis, yearly basis, et cetera. So that's how I want to think from an analysis standpoint, and some of the different things we can do, right? So let's start off with the process maps. And the reason I kind of put this first is, if we don't know anything, I don't know how many folks out there know every single, again, let's say permit, right? The first step in the process all the way to the final step, and know every single step in between for every one that they have. Some might not. Either way, it's always a good chance to, kind of refine that, figure out what's going on, put some documentation together, how are things actually looking? And then where can we trim a little bit? Where can we relieve some of the bottlenecks? So that's what I want you guys to think about a little bit there. Actually, here's like a process map here. Take a look at this. This is a kind of simple example, right? Where's the starting point? Where are all the different levers that can be pulled throughout the process? And then, where does obviously filter out at the end? So just a way to think about it. This is one simple example. What I want to talk about, though, if you think of the next step, so if we have various process maps set aside, we kind of understand where's every step in the process. What happens next? Well, how do we look at maybe changing the sequence of it? How do we look at improving the efficiency? If you all don't get anything from the webinar today but this, I hope this is a good visual to take away. Most jurisdictions, heck, not just jurisdictions, like a lot of companies, et cetera, look like the left-hand side. It looks like a funnel. You have people calling in, emailing, walking in the office. Maybe they're filling out stuff online, right? Maybe they're texting. A lot of folks I know on the call, they're scheduling inspections. They're calling the inspector directly, all right? So now folks in the office don't know that's even going on. There's all this happening. Think of that like the funnel. Well, what happens a lot of times, unless it's so buttoned up perfect, is sometimes there's a bottleneck and it slows things down. What I want you guys to think of is more of a shoot approach, and that's the on the right-hand side of the visual, right? If we have one area of passage, so we have jurisdictions, as an example, that do everything online. Every permit, every license, they pay online. There's always some people that are going to come in the office, and they accept that, but everything's paperless for the most part, and that trims things down. But almost 100% online. Well, what that allows is for one central passage. You guys know exactly where it's going, who's up next, the bat, where it has to go to, and you can relay and be transparent. So what I really want you all to think about is as you're considering new ways to do it, how do you make your department look more like the right visual versus the left? And I think that could really help you all out as you go forward, right? So as I keep going forward here, right, part of the, to use the right new sequences that you come up with, it's also having the right tools in place. So that, that may be, obviously, with SmartGov and stuff, we do permitting and, inspection software, stuff like that. It could be that, could be other things as well, right? It could be having the right, merchant vendor so that you can maybe collect online payments. There's a variety of things, but think about some of the different tools that you could potentially use, and maybe the tools that you're using today, and are those helping the process or are those hurting the process? And if it's in that category of hurting the process, how do you look to maybe get rid of it or change it or improve it? right? So again, nothing groundbreaking, but a lot of times that gets kind of pushed to the back shelf as y'all are so busy, is to really pull that out and think, well, if we have the right tools in place, that can make us, efficient. It's like a tire with, low pressure. It's not that the bike doesn't still work, but does it go as fast and is it as steady as it could be? So just some things to consider there. The last thing, and this kind of goes back to my point earlier, is, really around investing kind of online or investing in better ways to get information up front. A lot of folks do that through some, sort of customer success portal, if you will. And I call it customer success because that's really what it is, right? The goal is that if done properly, right, the customers are going to be successful. So that's how maybe, again, a kind of a change of mindset, if you will. So is that folks to answer, maybe there's a FAQ on the website, maybe it's paying online, digitizing the application process, all the way from what I mentioned earlier was fillable PDFs to actually having them fill out all the documentation in terms of like a dynamic form. So that maybe paper goes away potentially, having submittals online, those type of things to really consider in terms of investing online in more of a customer centric way. So just some things to compare there that could be valuable for y'all as you look at this analysis of the processes. If you start with the process map and then kind of work it through and tweak it, I think it's going to really help y'all. And really on the other end, a couple of things to point on from this standpoint is, how do we look at being able to, hey, we have a small team. How do we actually get the right resources? How do we, trim things a little bit, right? How do we take an hour that we are wasting and actually put that back in our day? So being able to look at that. And remember, I know there's a lot of folks here, right? How many, again, virtual hand raise, right, came into the role recently or maybe in the last couple of years and like kind of did a face palm like, oh my gosh, they're doing it that way. It happens, right? We all go through that. So a lot of those ad hoc methods, those things that were kind of thrown together in the past, maybe they need to be brought out to the forefront and actually looked at and changed for the better in the future, okay? Obviously going to a more automated process, improving the workflow, stuff like that could be obviously important. Like I mentioned earlier, that visual, the funnel approach to the shoot option, that might be a thumbs up for y'all. And a lot of this too, by the way, this comes back to, how do we get the metrics available to report back? So whether that's, city leadership or, county commissioners, whatever it may be, how do we do this to actually improve the process? Obviously performance, right, of everything, but really, from a cost standpoint, where are we wasting dollars, right? Where can we actually help improve? Because, budgets obviously are always tight, right? So how do we actually improve some of the cost savings, if you will, by improving the efficiency in the process? All right, so analysis, right? So we have collaboration, right? We're working with a lot of, different folks. How do we improve that? We're analyzing our processes. We're getting that. What's the kind of last step here? Well, it's growth. What do we do with all this? How do we get better? How are we better tomorrow than we are today? There's a lot of that adage of kind of getting 1% better, if you will. That's how I want you guys to think about your departments there. So I threw a couple things down. Again, this isn't everything. But I think there's some different ways that y'all might think. I'm not sure how you're doing things at your specific departments or jurisdiction. But if you think about it, right, creating forums and seminars, this is something, even like a webinar that we're doing today. I'm not sure how many folks out there have actually done this, set up a webinar like this for all their contractors, let's say. And maybe they introduce, hey, I know you've been working with us for a lot of years, but hey, things have changed over the last couple of years. Let's set up an actual webinar like this for 30 minutes and let's actually talk through some of those changes, field any questions. Those are some things I want you guys to think about. How do you actually communicate new updates? Is it just put in the website somewhere? Is it a form on the front counter? How is that actually broadcasted out to folks, especially if they're new or working with the particular jurisdiction? So something to think about that could be really valuable as you guys look to maybe go against the grain on some of those old processes that have been done like that for a while. One of the things here, and this is actually a huge win, I know, for folks that have done this, and I'm not sure, again, how many have done this, is surveying, right? I actually coach a lot of folks on this. Is they're trying to say, hey, Brian, I'm trying to get, I'm just trying to get a win here in the jurisdiction to actually get some visibility on this, that we need maybe to go online, or we need to, accept payments online, or whatever it might be. Surveying and then just asking, right? It could be one simple question. Everyone that walks in the office, hey, can you answer this? You know, hey, would it be easier if you were able to submit this permit online? Checkbox, yes or no. It could be more in-depth. You guys can decide, but surveying the actual customers, that gives you really rich data of the folks that y'all are serving each and every day into what they're thinking, how they're approaching things, and it also might help you down the road as you actually are trying to pitch this maybe to council and get approval for this, for whatever it is, budget, et cetera. Having that data could be really valuable. So I would say if you can survey, gosh, I would go ahead and do it right away. I'd do it tomorrow. If you think about this, you know, I always look at it from a standpoint of, you know, staff education. There's a variety of things, right? Everyone probably knows, like, you know, there's ICMA out there. There's all this different stuff, right? And you can go to those, right? I know there's local, maybe it's building official, you know, conferences or municipal leagues or whatever it might be. But just even internal staff, right? You know, sometimes I know some folks have done well. I've actually done this at other companies as well, is get your team and your staff, and maybe it's a new process or it's something new that you guys want to learn. Have everyone go out and search, say, hey, find something new that would be valuable for our team and bring it back. And let's have a meeting every 2 weeks and just go over it. Let's educate each other on new processes, new things. What are other cities doing, right? What are other folks on the other side of the country doing? Maybe we can learn, expand, and get knowledge that way. On the flip side, obviously going to those conferences, et cetera, could be really valuable. So that's what I want you guys to think about from a staff education standpoint. How do we empower the staff more? How do we actually, you know, make them? There's a funny thing. I don't know if you guys have seen this online the last few years, where it says basically is, you know, what if we invest all this money in developing our staff and they leave? And, you know, the flip side of it is, well, what if we don't and they stay? That's how I want you guys to think about, you know, the departments you're in, right? The great work that y'all do, how do we make it better and better and better? Well, doing that is investing in the staff that you have, educating, giving some great insight. And that also comes back to morale build and those type of things. So it could be a variety. It doesn't always have to be work. There could be some play involved there. So just you know, from a staff education standpoint, some things to think about. And then, you know, I say future focused. I mean, I'm always looking at the next day, the next week, if possible. Where are some things that, you know, you can look at, obviously, to get better than you are today? And we've covered a lot of this, but it's just around, like I said, development and growing as a team, being able to actually, maybe it's, you know, one of these things actually, let me take a quick tangent here, is, you know, how do we educate new council that comes in? How do we educate new leaders that come in? And say, hey, here's how we've done it, or here's some things that have been successful for us, or some things that we're looking to do. Hey, did you know that, you know, X, Y, and Z is happening, you know, around the country, but we're not really doing that here? That's a great way, one, to kind of almost get an early in, if you will, but to start the conversations. Instead of just, you know, I know I have some folks that, you know, I've gone to maybe a council and said, hey, we want to get this software, we want to do that. And it's kind of come back next year. But if we educated the leadership a little bit more on some opportunities that are out there, there could be a great way to actually have some cohesiveness and really some growth in that department in terms of that communication. So just something, again, to think about from a future focus standpoint. I won't belabor that point too much, but, you know, again, going back, listening to customers, right? What are they doing? Again, whether that's surveys or what have you, right? What's actually going on out there, and how can we implement some of those in terms of our processes, how we collaborate? So all those different areas that we talked about earlier. And remember, education, I always say, equals retention, right? The more we educate our staff, the more that we give them and empower them to be those advisors. That helps in retention. That helps in folks that are, you know, kind of love showing up to work and love putting in the, you know, the best effort that they can. And I threw in a little, I don't know if anyone's gonna get the band that, you know, don't stop thinking about tomorrow. Bonus points for everyone that was thinking Fleetwood Mac. But always keeping future focused, right? How do we actually know not only what we're doing today, but what are things that are coming down over the next month, 6 months, year, and things that we can get ahead of, especially if it's development and growth. If we see that on the radar coming up, well, let's go ahead and get ahead of it, and let's put things in process now versus actually kind of getting into the thick of it and being like, OMG, we should have prepared a little bit more for that. So Couple things to consider here, kind of to wrap up with this, right, is, think of the proactive, steps, obviously, improving customer success. So as I talked about, kind of being a step ahead, being able to think about, what's going on in the future, what are some different opportunities that exist there. Clear expectations is just anything you can do to take miscommunication right out is going to really help you, whether that's, again, better on the website, as folks come into the office, have this simple, clear message. Thinking about, time conscious, being able to actually understand how long things are taking. Are they taking too long? Is there opportunities for us to improve from a process standpoint? And then, I kind of bolded here, the repeat as necessary, right? This shouldn't be a, hey, we did a process map 2 years ago, Brian, we're good. Let's keep looking at that. Let's keep turning over new stones and seeing if there's opportunities for us to improve, right? And as those things improve, and it could be little tweaks. Remember, I'm not saying to kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? These could be small little tweaks. How do we actually do that to ultimately improve the department for the better, or the whole city, county, et cetera, for the better? So I always like to end on this, and then we'll jump into a couple fun things here, but especially with some Q&A. But what are the wins, right? Because we always think, we went through some different areas, Brian, but what are some of the wins? Eliminating friction with the customers. Some folks have phenomenal reputations and relationships. How do we even take that one step further, right? How do we improve wait and completion times? Again, if we know our process and we know how long things are taken, and maybe, by the way, maybe you don't. Maybe you kind of have a guess of, hey, here's how long, this particular application process is. How do we button that up and actually make sure we do that? And then again, boosting employee morale. A lot of that's through, again, learning, educating, making feel everyone's a part of the process and the bigger win. And then better data equals better business decisions. The reason I kind of put this as a final note is kind of going back to what I just mentioned earlier was, if you have the right data, information, whether it's surveys, anything, you can not only make better business decisions in the department, but you can relay those to the proper folks that maybe from a budget standpoint, et cetera. So I really think it's important, the better that you can report on things, the better that you can collect data and information, both internally on process, but also, kind of externally from customers, a huge, massive win for y'all. All right, so I'm going to go through we'll jump into Q&A in a second. Let me just go through a quick story here, because I think this is important. I'll chat one more second about Dude Solutions, just to kind of wrap things around. But, we've been talking a lot about these processes, and I remember, I'll talk about the city of Delano with Jerome, but there's so many of these stories that are really cool. But being able to look at, and again, whatever you guys are using there, whatever your processes are, think about this from being able to improve. I know specifically, I don't have the stat on here, I should have, but I think their council was getting, I think it was dozens of phone calls per week on complaints. That went down 70% when they actually went online with their processes. Again, they went to that shoot approach versus the funnel approach, and was able to actually improve a lot of that reputation with their customers. Those phone calls almost went away. So something to think about. Again, everyone kind of has that win. If you really look at process and our future focus, there's a lot of opportunity there. So Jerome's a great example. I always like to bring up just what they're doing out there in Cali. Last two things on Dude Solution, then we're going to do a QA, but we're talking about SmartGov specifically. Again, this is for a lot of folks that don't know who we are, but as I said, we kind of play in a lot of different departments, especially from a local government side. So things to think about. If anyone is interested, again, there's such an array on this phone call. I know, some folks are maybe going through budget for next year or talking with different departments that they're involved with. So think about that, whether it's, from a public works and work order standpoint, whether it's energy, think about stuff from IT technology, or even if you go to police and fire, safety management, those type of things. So there's a lot of different areas from a Dude Solution standpoint. We're happy to help and answer any questions as you guys are looking at those opportunities there. And all this is cloud-based, obviously mobile-friendly, native apps for iOS and Android, supported obviously in terms of our great staff here, both in our headquarters. We have in Cary, North Carolina. We also have some offices, some on the West Coast as well. So really an opportunity to kind of cross the country to help all the different jurisdictions that need it. I'm going to do one more poll question. And again, this is kind of circles back more from a Dude Solutions side of what I just mentioned, because again, sometimes it's hard to understand everyone on the exact call and what are some of the needs today. So if you guys don't mind, if any of this relates to you, this will obviously help out for us here. If you want us to contact you, if you want to have any additional conversations around some of these areas, I can get you all to the right people that are kind of experts in these areas on our team. So again, we'll throw that up quick, and then we'll go into some Q&A and pop it out. Earl, did I go through too quick on that? I don't know.
No, you were perfect. We appreciate that. Poll is live for anybody who wants more information, like Brian mentioned, so we'll leave that up here for another 15 seconds or so. But while you guys are closing out the poll, we can go ahead and jump into Q&A. I've had a couple roll in. We'll go ahead and, Brian, tee you up here for the first one. First question, any tips on how to approach a new council, particularly about budgeting for tools for the department?
Earl, you gave me the difficult one up front, man. You gotta throw me the softball to start. Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to some of the stuff I just mentioned. And again, I'm taking an outsider's perspective. I'm not in, the mix with everyone in your different departments and roles, so forgive me on that. But I think a lot of the stuff I see is really just around, it kind of goes back to one of the slides earlier. How do you actually coach the new, so as they're coming in, maybe as they're, elected, et cetera, how are we setting up meetings, discovery sessions with them, letting them know, I hear a lot of the time, I'm not going to name any names. I hear a lot of time where it's like, Brian, I don't think the council knows what our department does. They've never been in, they never stepped in the doors. So if that's the case, though, be proactive and go out and set up meetings and have those conversations about, hey, here's how we've done it in the past. Here's where the department's going. Look at the growth, right? Coming back with data. Hey, look how many permits we issued last year versus 4 years ago, right? Things are massively on an upswing. Well, we still have the same staff size, or we're still using the same technology that we did 20 years ago. Those are the type of conversations I think you have. And ultimately, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, like the council or maybe it's the mayor, what have you, as an example, they're people just like anyone, right? They maybe have businesses in town or they shop or whatever. They're going to understand, but it's a matter of actually going through and having those conversations because they may not know. They just may not know. They have a lot on their plate. So let's go ahead and be proactive is what I'd say is kind of the best tip, at least to start.
No, that's great. Thank you for that. Another question that's rolled in here. We get a lot of data from the county, primarily like addressing. We have to go to the website to retrieve it. Is there any way we could eliminate those steps and kind of save time? Yeah, I mean, this is, I hear this a lot is there's disparate systems, there's multiple clicks that you have to do, whatever it might be. So there's a lot of different things that are kind of happening in the process. How do we actually make sure we have one central tool of record, as I call it? So yeah, there's some different ways. I mean, there's probably a lot of tools. I know with SmartGov we have this, and there's probably some others as well. But being able to have, tying in with the county, so that audit, as an example, with some of our partners that would, if you talk to them or whatever, that would mention is that data pulls right into SmartGov to actually be able to. So if the county, updates it once a week, then it updates automatically in SmartGov. So that's a way you could potentially, but again, part of that is the tools in place. There may be some other ways that can tie in, maybe if you have some older systems, but a lot of that obviously is trying to work with the county, see if they can send you that information. They might have it as like an automated report or document or what have you, because I know it could be cumbersome sometimes to always go out to like a website and look. And that goes for GIS data as well, right? If they're managing that for y'all, being able to have that pulled in real time is valuable to obviously, that's one less thing you have to worry about, so. No, awesome insight there, Brian. Really appreciate it. Actually, I have one question that came up. I had a chuckle when I saw this one, and I think you will as well a little bit. Is Tim asked, do you have any suggestions in helping staff to buy into the advisor/case manager model who may be resistant to changing models? And I think that's funny because we've talked about the changing workforce here at the Dude a lot. Over the last couple quarters through some of our marketing campaigns we've had going on. So maybe speak to that a little bit, the change management and how to kind of help with the buy-in and those who may be resistant to change a little bit.
I'm going to take a different angle on this, probably than maybe most people thought. I don't know. I mean, I would really go back to the mission and the values, right? Is there defined values in the department that y'all have? Like companies that we have, that we're at, or other, companies, right? Private companies, right? There's values, there's mission statements. Is there anything defined like that? And the reason I point to that first is if I'll kind of give everyone, I'm not sure if anyone knows Simon Sinek. I'll recommend to go look. He has a phenomenal TED Talk from probably 10 years ago called Start With Why. Go look at that. And that might be a great visual from we kind of, he kind of starts out like we believe, it's kind of a different way of thinking. But if you change the conversation and you start to let the staff know that, hey, we're going to do things a little different going forward because this is going to help out better for their customers. And understanding, hey, these are our 2 or 3 or 4 values that we have going forward. Help the staff write them together. And now when you're saying, hey, we're going to change this way because it aligns with this particular value, I think that's a great way, is getting everyone in the room versus what happens a lot is, nope, this is the way we're doing it. And, and now people aren't empowered. Bring everyone into a group, say, hey, we want to really define our values going forward, get that set. And I think that could ultimately help change the tune. And listen, some people are harder to change. I get it. Sometimes too, I guess, as a second, maybe a 1B, if you will, maybe look at other jurisdictions locally that are doing it well or have done that. Are there any stories you can share? Because stories obviously always win. If there's a way that you can share a story of, hey, they did this and it helped do that, that could potentially maybe have that swing vote, if you will, in the other direction. So just 2 things I'm thinking of on the fly here.
No, that's perfect. Perfect insight there. Looks like that has about wrapped up all the questions we've had that have come in. Or actually, one more here, Brian. I think actually we'll address this. Can you speak to kind of additional training specifically on reporting and analysis with SmartGov, and maybe even getting into mobile capabilities, inspections, and code enforcement as well a little bit?
In terms of just the capabilities available, or?
Yeah, I think just if there are any trainings that we offer with that, or any I guess kind of best practices you would recommend that they go along with some of that.
Yeah, and if there's any, I know there's such a mix of folks on the call. If there's any current SmartGov partners, some are using certain parts and maybe not others, I'm happy to follow up with everyone, or we'll make sure we contact if they throw their name to you, Earl, and we'll make sure those specific use cases we can talk through. But from like a mobile standpoint, yeah, I mean, I think being able, like I mentioned before, right, how do we actually make the communication better? Not only obviously internal staff, but also with the customers. From a mobile capabilities, right, I think, there's certainly web apps out there. Everyone probably knows what those are. It's basically your website, on a mobile app. But having the native capability, those built-in features, iOS and Android, so some of the things with a SmartGov is really valuable. I know for a lot of jurisdictions. I think the big one is just being able to have, like the power of SmartGov in your pocket. So if an inspector's out in the field all day long, they want to be able to get updated on new inspections that may come in potentially. They want to be able to look at parcel data or GIS data. They want to be able to look at past corrections. They want to be able to send out inspection results right there to someone's email. So there's a lot of different things from a mobile capability side that's really neat. And it's just, again, a matter of, I think to the question earlier, right, most folks jump at it. Some say, hey, this is still something I want to try out. Obviously, there's a mixed bag there. But if you get folks, like once they get it in their hand and they're actually using it for a few days, I mean, it's unbelievable the difference. And plus, I'm big on saving the environment, maybe, right, is it trims a lot of paper in the process. So being able to have less data entry and less paper just flying around could be very valuable as well. I don't know if I went on a tangent there. I hope that answered the question.
No, that was good. Yeah, no. We got one last one we'll address, and we'll go ahead and close up shop and give you guys all a little bit of time back in your day. This one specifically relates to, say, hey, we've got a tool, Brian, and we actually use you guys at Dude Solutions and SmartGov, but our jurisdiction is not using it to the full potential and wants to kind of grow usage and improve from there. What next steps would you recommend to kind of address those, the need and the want for improvement with SmartGov?
Yeah, what I would encourage is, again, we'll get your information. Let's set up a call with your team or maybe it's the folks that need the encouragement, if you will, to broaden the reach or to use it in more full capacity. Let's set up a call. We'll do one like a webinar like this with just your team, and let's actually talk through that process, what's working well, where are some opportunities for improvement. Obviously, we'll be able to have access to your account and stuff like that, so we can look at those different things. And really, it's not about you need to do this. It's, hey, here's the coaching on what are some things that could be valuable, and then you guys can sit back and work as a team and say, hey, do we want to do that? Do we want to bring that portion? As an example, like we have some folks that just use the code enforcement portion of SmartGov, and then they want to grow to the permitting side and those type of things, or licensing. So if you're in that, if you're in that camp, then yeah, let's talk through. If you're kind of using some things, but maybe, hey, you're not in the online portal, again, another conversation. We can do a specific use case for those specific partners, because everyone's going to be a little different in terms of how they're actually using it at their jurisdiction. So yeah, absolutely, Earl, let's grab their information, and we'll certainly follow up here in the next little bit with them.
Yep, perfect. We're on it. Well, thank you everybody so much for joining us for today's presentation. Brian, thank you for your knowledge and sharing that with all of us and walking us through that. Job very well done to you today. We will follow up with everybody who registered for the webinar with a recording, so that should hit your email box here either later this afternoon or early tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. Feel free to pass that on to anybody else in your department you think may find it valuable, or even friends who may be down the road for you, peers in your network that you feel like might gain value from that. But again, we know how busy you guys are. Greatly appreciate your time. Brian, thanks again, and we hope to see you guys again on another webinar really soon.
Yeah, thank you all.
Yep, thanks everybody. Bye-bye.